Welcome to the Conscious Radio Network's YouTube channel. Become enlightened, have fun, and tell all your friends and family to share with everyone they know. You can find us on Facebook and stay up to date on our Facebook group, or find us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Our podcasts can be found on Libsyn, iHeart, Spotify, Google Podcast, and more. Most of all, remember to go to our official website at consciousradionetwork.com for podcasts, hosts, future shows, and scheduling. We also want to welcome our international audience. Don't stop now. Enjoy the community. Subscribe today.
This is the Conscious Radio Network.
Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you might be on this spaceship we call Earth. Welcome to Conscious Radio Network's weekly podcast series, The Seance. I'm your host, Reverend Dr. Paul Meckes. If this is your first time tuning in, please click subscribe, like, share, comment, and also follow us wherever you listen to your podcasts. Today, let me get my, there we go. Energy is real. Let's discover the subtle world of human energy. Today, former engineer, now author, speaker, and energy healer. Midway through a successful 20-year engineering career, she experienced a life-changing, spontaneous spiritual opening, transforming her from skeptic to seeker. Her spiritual journey eventually led her to explore human energy and alternative healing as a side vocation. A graduate of the Barbara Brennan School of Healing in Florida, she has been an energy practitioner in Vancouver, Canada for over 25 years. She recently published a second edition of her book, Energy is Real, a practical guide for managing personal energy in daily life, which she co-authored with Claudette Bouchard, I believe it is, Bouchard?
Bouchard.
French.
Yes.
A fellow energy practitioner, she loves teaching people about our subtle energy nature and empowering them to own their energy so they can truly own their lives. Let's welcome to the show, The Seance, Gail Rand. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm
Good.
pleased to be here.
Thank you. And so, as an engineer, what kind of engineering was it? Structural, electrical?
My degree was in mechanical, and I
Awesome.
specialized with automation and controls. That was my specialty.
I work around a lot of engineers, mechanical, electrical, not bio, but yeah, electrical and mechanical and structural. So did the engineering field kind of get you into this? How did that?
No. I was totally woo-phobic when I was an engineer. That was quite a while ago. I was very much left-brain logical skeptic, and I wouldn't even allow Bible in my house. That's how left-brain logical skeptical I was. I wasn't exactly. I wouldn't call myself an atheist, because that's taking a position. Which I felt we didn't have enough information to go on, so I couldn't do that. But I was an agnostic. And basically, I figured there was a scientific explanation for it all, but if there were some sort of conscious energy, it was vast, and it had nothing to do with, really, it was too busy and important to have anything to do with us little humans. So that was about the limit of my conception of God. The only thing that gave me a sense of something way bigger than me was nature. Yeah. So if I were in a storm, like hurricane, I was never in a hurricane, but blizzards. I grew up in Quebec and Ontario, where we got plenty of snow, and you might be in a complete whiteout blizzard. Or I did once experience an earthquake, and there was this sense of awe that you couldn't help feeling. Or, just being on the top of a mountain looking, into the mountain peaks beyond, and all that lifted me up. But I didn't know what that was. And I just stayed very solidly in my left brain logical mind and did very well with that. I actually loved engineering, and I thrived in my career and learned. And I was one of very few women in engineering at that time. This was in the 70s and 80s, and well, into the 90s. And so, that was an interesting time to be a woman engineer. I was generally the only one in the company where I was, so it was up to me to kind of educate the guys on how to treat me, and because they didn't know what to do, right? What do I do with this? They had no experience working with a female peer, and so fortunately for me, I had brothers, and I was the oldest, so I was the bigger of the three of us, and stood me well. So I felt like an equal, just because of that, growing up with brothers and having to hold my own in our family, whom I'm very close to now. But back then, when I was little, it was competition. So I kind of knew how to work with them in a way that was I didn't insist on being treated delicately or anything like that. I was a conscious equal, and I behaved that way, but I did it with humor. So I wasn't demanding rights, bristling. I mean, I was a feminist in the sense that I felt we deserved equal treatment, but I wasn't in the sense that it is now, where they're trying to make all men bad, and that, and we're all human. I just want to be human too. It was basically my approach, and my colleagues were great. I took the tension. We'd come into a meeting and nobody knew what to expect, because I had a sense of humor. I was able to diffuse any tension, and in a very short time we were joking together, and everybody was relaxed, and this is going to work. And I remember once, I got along really well with my colleagues, and I remember once in one of my projects, the HR guy was assigning people to different projects, and he was reluctant. He was not looking forward to asking, who was going to work with me, and he figured they were all going to not want to, right? He says, and then we need, Gail's on this team. We need some, who's willing to work with Gail? And they all raised one up there. Oh, yeah, Gail's cool. Yeah, she's good. And he was so taken aback that he hadn't worked with me, right? So he was coming from that early 1970s, early 1980s perspective, where it was so unusual. He figured everyone would want to avoid it, but they were all saying, "No, I will." So he even shared this with me. I mean, he was so shocked. He later shared this with me. When I was once he'd gotten to know me, he shared, back when you first came. And I said, "Wow, these guys really, and I think the key was that I was good at my job as well. So it's not like I was just faking it. I actually knew what I was doing, and engineers seem to respect competence, and so I didn't need special treatment because I could do the job. And I wasn't lifting heavy equipment or anything like that. I was using my mind, which was perfectly well honed for the job. Mm-hmm. And also engineers have kind of a wacky sense of humor, and so I was on the same frequency, the same wavelength, and so we got along great as colleagues, and we had fun. And I remember some of the guys saying to me, since you joined our lunch, because I would see the meeting in the cafeteria, whatever, say, mind if I join you? And they'd say, oh, sure, of course, being polite. But then after they got to know me, they said to me, Gail, since you joined our group, our lunchtime conversation has really improved a notch. We were talking about solving world problems, instead of what this ball game or I don't know what else guys talk about, but I would imagine it was probably they were insisting it was a lower frequency. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And so, but they liked it. It was fun and creative and kind of inspiring and fun. Yeah, and we could get goofy as well.
Hmm.
So that was a nice compliment for me to hear that from my colleagues, and I wasn't trying. I was just being
Yeah.
the
Just be.
equal that I
Yeah.
felt
Be.
that I
Be in the
was, right?
moment and be yourself, and
Exactly, and I
yeah.
didn't need special. I was. I took it as a challenge. If there was something difficult, took it as a challenge to learn, and so and they were happy to help me. So even the old crusty guys, experts love to talk about their expertise,
Yep.
right? And so you ask them, when I was a brand new engineer, I would ask questions, technical questions of them, and how did you deal with this? And they would love to tell their war stories, right? And so I learned a lot from the older guys as well, and they loved telling me. It's like they became like my uncles,
Yeah.
or And so there was a very comfortable atmosphere in our working environment, and it just sort of flowed organically that way. And
Yeah.
I don't know how I knew to do that. I just did it. I just sort of I guess treated them like my brothers, and I trusted them and respected their knowledge and competence as well. So,
Yeah.
and so it was really a non-issue, except to those who didn't know me,
Mhm.
right? And they soon learned that there was nothing to worry about.
Yeah. There was a frequency and energy there that you changed the group.
Yeah,
And
yeah, and I didn't even know I was doing that, right? I
yeah.
was just being
Yeah.
myself.
Now,
But
speaking of energy and frequencies and working with that, when did that trigger and get you into what you're doing now
well,
or have been doing?
yeah, I have been doing for about 25 years.
Yeah.
Um, well, what happened was I got along well with the guys at work. Um, but it's like I had downplayed my femininity so as to minimize stress or weird dynamics and that sort of thing. I focused on my capabilities,
Hmm.
and so I didn't dress like a guy or anything. I wasn't trying to be a fake guy. I was being myself, but I wasn't deliberately dressing sexy either. I was dressing in a business-like way.
Yeah.
And so I thought, why push things in a direction that's it's not going to work out well for anybody?
Mm.
And also I knew I was highly visible. It's just I was kind of representing women in a way,
Yeah.
and I was kind of mindful of that. And so even though I later joined a company which had quite a few women engineers, and we would sometimes meet socially as a group and talk about our experiences. Some of them had actually experienced sexual harassment on the job, but I hadn't, mainly because I shifted the mindset
Yeah.
just by how I saw myself. Right, I didn't see myself as any kind of, and it helped that I'm tall, so I'm 5'10.5", so that
Wow. That helps.
places me in a decent height category to look eye
Yeah.
to eye, right? Yes, like, whereas some of them were petite, and I could see how that would affect your mindset when everybody's taller than you, right? So
Yeah.
anyway, so what happened is that I got very comfortable in being like that, and where it didn't work was in my intimate relationships. So I was I would forget that you don't treat your boyfriend the same way as you treat the guys at work.
Mm.
And and I'd come home from work, and my mind would still be on what I'd been working on, and I'd be in my work persona and that sort of thing. And we would get into arguments about things, and yeah, we had lovely times too. But there was a bit of a battle going on between personalities, because I would forget sometimes it's okay to let down and be the girl here, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and so um, now my boyfriend and I had been together 4 years. We were living together. We were talking about marriage and kids. We were looking at to buy a house together. We'd actually been making offers on places and that sort of thing. So we had reached that level in our relationship where we were, talking about settling down. And I think I was 33 at that point, which is kind of the age when people start getting serious about, starting a life together. And so we were having that whole conversation, and enjoyed living together, and we had a lot of similar interests, and we loved each other, or so I thought. And I was in my heart, he was the man I was going to marry. And it seemed like everything was moving in that direction, especially if we were going out looking to buy a house together and talking about having all the things. So in my neat little ordered engineer mind, my future was neatly plotted out. There was the house in the suburbs, the 2.5 kids, the minivan in the driveway, and the golden retriever, the whole happy families picture. And I had no doubt that's what was going to unfold. And so I was rudely awakened, literally, in the end, when I discovered that my partner was fooling around and seeing other people while he was living with me.
Wow.
And I discovered because he didn't show up one night, and that was highly unusual. Usually he would let me know if he was going to be late or something like that. He didn't show up at all. And I went into calling the police, hospitals, the whole thing, right?
Wow.
And finally he came home smelling of perfume and cigarettes. He was a non-smoker, and he never wore perfume. What's going on here? And that's when he confessed, and I was heartbroken. I was devastated. I had trusted. I totally, had believed this relationship was flowering into its intended destination, and suddenly that was no longer the case. Suddenly, and he was happy to keep going the same way, but I wasn't happy because my heart was broken. How could I ever trust someone, let alone have children with them, if they weren't committed to me in this way? And so I felt like my whole future had fallen off the edge of a cliff. It's like the earth had opened up, and my future had fallen into the abyss. Man. And of course it was my place we were sharing, and so I had to ask him to leave because I just couldn't be living with him with this unresolved, and my heart was so badly broken. I knew I was going to need some time. So he did move out, and then I was left alone with my grief, and it was heartbreak, and it was grief, and I went into a negative spiral. I had no skills. I had no energy skills whatsoever. I was completely naive around anything but the material world.
Yeah.
And so what happens, and I don't know how it happens for men, but for many women, we'll start criticizing ourselves and judging ourselves and blaming ourselves for our failure. And so this very critical voice in my head was basically kicking me while I was down, the ego. Yeah. You're a loser. Nobody will ever love you. You're worthless. All this, a self-loathing. I don't know where it came from, but it was, maybe it came from, I don't know, early childhood or whatever, but I believed it, and it took me deeper. I went into this spiral of despair to the point where and every time it hit me with, you're worthless, blah, blah, blah. You don't deserve love, all of that. It took me deeper into the spiral until it felt like I'd splatted on the bottom of the abyss. I had fallen in after my dream and splatted on the bottom. And I was like, as if I broke open. And I was just sobbing and feeling totally bereft of worth, of love, and all that. And as I was feeling so utterly unlovable, I suddenly heard the words, "But I love you," huge, ringing out in my head and filling me with energy. So there was this flow of golden pinky energy coming down through the crown of my head, all the way down through my whole body, filling and flooding every cell with the most infinite love. I never experienced that ever in my life before. And if it hadn't been for the tangible experience of that energy flooding through my body, feeling like every cell and atom of my being was deeply seen and loved, I would never have even paid attention to that voice.
Yeah.
But it was so tangible. And that's why my book is called Energy is Real, because it was real and I couldn't deny my experience. Couldn't explain it.
Yeah.
And I went into an altered state as I was being uplifted by this incredible, vast, loving energy. And I felt it was addressing me personally. It saw me, every aspect of my being, even my flaws and all that, and loved me anyway. And I like to say, how people love ugly dogs. They're so ugly, they're cute.
Yeah.
Well, when I was getting every one of my flaws was cute. They were just places where I was becoming, and places where I hadn't grown into yet. And it was just like this total acceptance and love right into my atomic structure. And as I went into this expanded state, it's as if my consciousness I could almost like seeing the cosmos or Earth from outside. And I understood in that moment, I had this revelation that this is true for all of us. I wasn't being singled out as something special.
Yeah.
I had just had a glimpse of the truth, and it was conscious and infinitely loving, and that there was absolutely nothing wrong with me. And not only that, I was totally lovable.
Yeah.
I was sort of feeling this incredible energy moving through me, and it was imprinting every cell. So I can't forget it.
What do you think this energy was? What did you think?
I didn't know. I didn't know. I knew it was vast. And yet the irony or paradox was it was vast, and yet at the same time, I felt it speaking to me from within. And so it was in every cell, as well as, cosmic in scale. So there was a strange, whoa, like big, vast and microscopic at the same time, right? And so I didn't know what it was. I had no idea, but I knew it was conscious and I knew it was loving. And then I had to figure that out. The engineer mind couldn't. What was that? And so that started me on my seeking path. So
some people would label it, like nowadays or any time, some people would label that as either an epiphany or a paranormal experience or a metaphysical experience.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
It was had a presence. Yeah.
It was the divine presence. It was divine. I now believe it was the divine. And I later stumbled upon the Course in Miracles, and when I read that and studied that, it totally resonated with me. Everything made sense. But that was a few years later. At first, I didn't know how to tackle it, so I ended up. I thought maybe the closest thing might be something like a near-death experience.
Yeah.
So I guess I had, I didn't mention I had. When I splatted on the bottom, I was suicidal. I had come to the point where I was, if I can't have love, why live? Yeah. And so I was at the point where I was thinking about how to end my life. And so it literally saved my life, this experience. I answered the question. Yes, you can have love. You are love and are loved. And that's an important piece I wanted to share in case there are any of your listeners who are in a state like that. There is love, and you are loved, even if you don't feel it yet. it is absolutely a reality. And I know it's hard for anyone to believe that when they're in that state, but because I had that tangible experience, I had to believe it. And my left brain logical mind believes physical experience, and that so I was given a physical or metaphysical experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Now moving forward, the course that got you into it with Barbara Brennan.
Yeah.
That was the first time. What got you into taking the? How did you
Well,
find it? And then
okay. Yeah. So my journey started out intellectual seeking, where I just became hungry to know more. What was that experience? And so as I started off, reading, well, in those days there was no internet, so it was reading books. And so the journey was through, reading about near-death experiences, and then I had started meeting people who were interested in these sorts of things. The way spirit works, they cross your path when you're ready. And so they started suggesting things for me to read, like The Seth Material by Jane Roberts. And that was huge. That was huge. It was just just a little paperback, right? Took me a year to, and I'm a fast reader. It took me a year to read it because every paragraph blew my mind. And I would read it. Remember, I came completely from like this state, woofo, to this very strange world. But because I had this experience, I wanted to understand it, and I realized that I wasn't going to get the answers from conventional science. And so I read, so the Seth Material was huge. And I remember as I was reading, and it's all about the nature of personal consciousness and a multidimensional reality. I mean, these were concepts that were what completely blew my mind.
Yeah.
But the weird thing was, as I was reading it, I felt all these connections happening in my brain, these tingling and sparks going in my brain and what, and then I suddenly realized, I know this. I don't know how I know this, but I know this. It was as if I was remembering information I had known some other time and had not been exposed to it before in this life. So that got me really curious. And then I started exploring ideas of past lives and things like that. And eventually that led me, took me 10 years of seeking before I even thought of getting healed. Or becoming a healer. What happened was, after I'd read enough, I was really liked Wayne Dyer's work and Louise Hay's work. I began to realize that I learned that your emotions and your thoughts and your beliefs can affect your health, and if you don't deal with blocked emotions and that sort of thing, you can get sick. And I realized I had never healed my broken heart, and my mind was doing fine, but my heart was still, suffering. And basically, I'd avoided it. I'd avoided my heart, and I dived into my work. So I got really good at my engineering job, but my heart was abandoned, basically. And so having read about the nature of how our thoughts and our beliefs, our emotions, and all that can affect us over time to actually cause illness in the body. I thought, okay, I think I need to heal my emotions, my broken. I don't have no idea how to do it. And so I went into a bookstore. I was living in Germany at the time, in Hamburg, and they had a New Age bookstore that had a decent selection of English books, English language books. So I went in there hoping to find something that would help me. And so I went to a certain section of the bookshelf, and as I was looking at the bookshelf, a member of the staff came by with fresh books, and they started loading them on the shelves, and they put one right in front of my nose called The Healing of Emotion. I think this one's for me.
Synchronicity.
So, yeah, I mean, I have to say, ever since that experience, synchronicity was happening left, right, and center. It's like Spirit had an agenda, and so it was written by Chris Griscom, who is a healer in New Mexico. She's not very well known in the U.S., even though she's American, but she's well known in Europe and loved in Europe. She was made famous through Shirley MacLaine's books. You may recall Shirley MacLaine wrote about some of her past lives in one of her books. Well, that was the healer who took her in her past life experiences. So Chris Griscom. And so when I read the book, I thought, oh, I need to do this. I think this may help me. So it tied in with my interest in the past lives, but also in healing the emotional energies. So I called them up and I booked a session. They had an office in France, and so I went there and did some intensive work. And it was like 4 days in a row, 3-hour sessions in altered state while you're exploring generally unpleasant lifetimes, right? Because it's a form of therapy, and therapy is usually to heal something that went wrong. So it's not, there were some balancing lifetimes as well, but it meant you faced some pretty horrible stuff. But at the end of it, you were cleared. So that, and for me,